Hey there, it's Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting dodo birds, leaky black. Matt Norlander. He's here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do to the like button. Shouts to the homie Brandon Davies. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel, we'd appreciate it if you did that while you were here. Let's get into it. Some encouraging news on the scheduling front this week. Opening night has improved, and that's because we now know opening night on November 4th is going to give us Gonzaga versus Baylor in downtown Spokane. Those are the schools I have ranked 7th and 8th in the top 25 and 1 right now. Baylor is 7th, Gonzaga is 8th. So this opening night is now going to have a top 10 matchup. It's the best matchup of the night. Norlander, you handled the headline. You had the news. Tell us, how did this opening night treat get done?
Well, if you are watching now or listening whenever you're listening, you'll recall if you listen to the Summer Shoot-Around, this is why you want to listen to the Summer Shoot-Around, because we broke the news on the Baylor episode that these two schools were going to play. We just didn't know when they were going to play. Frankly, I think there's a 73% chance GP forgot that I broke that news on that episode. Regardless, here we are. Now we know it's going to be on opening night. They looked into...
Well, I appreciate you reminding us.
Just letting you know, the shoot-around's worth. We do a little scoop here and there on the shoot-around episodes. You shouldn't just
go back and listen to that. I guess then I might listen to that on my drive somewhere today.
Yeah, we know that's not going to happen. So when we talked about it in the shoot-around, I put out there that maybe it was going to be Vegas. That fell through. They looked in Mexico. That fell through, and they landed in downtown Spokane. And this is going to be the first of what's expected to be probably a 3-year agreement between Gonzaga and Baylor for the next 2 seasons. I would expect that Gonzaga and Baylor probably in either next year or the year after, they'll probably play again in the first game of the season. I know Baylor has designs, and this is a really good thing, and we'll get to this kind of broader point in a couple minutes here. I think Baylor now wants to be the school that schedules a high-profile top 25 level opponent on the opening night of the season, which we obviously need more of. We don't have nearly enough of that. We'll give you a few examples of that shortly. And thankfully, Scott Drew and Mark Few are really, really close. They've obviously played each other in recent seasons. They actually, remember, they tried to schedule each other amid the COVID season, and then that game was canceled like day of because of COVID outbreaks. So, they're in constant contact, and Scott Drew is not running from opening the season with a bang here. They've got Gonzaga in Spokane, and then 5 days later, they will play Arkansas in Dallas, which is the toughest 1-2 any team will have this season. It's appropriately so for a Baylor team that's top 10. You've got Gonzaga top 10 as well. Since we did our Gonzaga shoot-around episode, by the way, Steele Venters has gone down with an injury. This is back-to-back seasons for him. Unfortunately, he has an Achilles tear, which is brutal, but GP has not adjusted his top 25 and 1 for that. But
would you?
I think I might ding him just a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair.
It could be a potential top 10 matchup, and and while it's not decided for sure, I think there's a healthy chance these two programs will play each other again on the first day of the season, either next year or the year after. And we sorely, so that's kind of the story of how it came together. We don't have a tip time yet. We don't have a television network yet because they're trying to figure this out. And I know, GP, you want to get to that as well, because the game, the way these media rights deals work and what's in the contracts and all that stuff. Gonzaga is in the WCC. The game will take place in the state of Washington. The way it works is ESPN has the first right of refusal for a broadcast of a WCC non-conference game if the game is happening in a state where a WCC school is. So this game is going to happen in Washington State. And because that ESPN will have first right of refusal, what makes that interesting is that this is going to be on Monday night. It will be Monday Night Football. It won't just be Monday Night Football. It will be the Chiefs playing Monday Night Football. It might be a good game against the Bucs. We'll see. And there's also a Manning cast scheduled for that night. So ESPN2 will be spoken for as well, which means this tip time right now is floating, because if ESPN opts to keep the game, then do they choose to want to tip it off at
11 Central, midnight Eastern,
correct,
live from Spokane after Monday Night Football?
Right. So it's either that, or you drop it on ESPNU, which frankly is not ideal whatsoever. I believe I believe our bosses have second right of refusal. So if ESPN passes on the game, I think it goes to CBS after that. We would more than welcome having that game, obviously a top 10 matchup. And the only truly big time game to open the season. I'm not going to say the sport sorely needed this, but come on now. Even if the night isn't great, and we can dive into that, we needed something better than Texas, Ohio State, which is fine, but we don't know how good Ohio State's going to be. We don't even know how good Texas is going to be. This is two really well-known coaches, two of the top 5 programs of the past half decade squaring off. Good on Scott Drew and good on Mark Few for leaning into this.
I would love for CBS or CBS Sports Network to grab this game. I'd be surprised. I just don't think ESPN would pass on a top 10 matchup between two national brands. So I assume we'll watch it on the ESPN family of networks, but we'll see. Let me ask you this. How much, if at all, does it matter when these two men, Mark Few at Gonzaga, Scott Drew at Baylor, are willing to open a season like this? Like somebody's going to start 0-1, and like a preseason top 10 team is going to start 0-1. That's guaranteed. How much does it matter that these are probably two of the men with the greatest job security in college basketball? Because I remember talking to Tom Izzo about this one time, because they would always schedule strongly out of the gate. And I was like, why are you willing to do this, but say the fellow over here at a comparable school isn't? He said, because, and I'm paraphrasing here, this is not an exact quote, but what I took from it was Tom more or less said, because if I get off to a bad start, nobody's going to think I need to lose my job. Nobody's going to think I can't coach or I don't know what I'm doing. So I don't have that same sort of instant negative reaction that maybe a different coach at a different school would deal with. So I can go do these types of things. I hate it when we lose, but I'm comfortable doing it because I know I'm not going to get on a message board and see a thread about it's time to make a change. Eventually, everybody gets to that point. But when I had this conversation with Tom, he's nowhere close to that. Fast forward to September 2024. Honestly, who has better job security in the country than Scott Drew at Baylor and Mark Few at Gonzaga?
Very, very few. I think that's a part of it there. A major part of it. You know, these are men that will have
their names on courts,
all the stuff named after them at their respective schools, obviously there. And as I had the news, they're like two likely future Naismith Memorial Hall of Famers. Like they're not there now because you can't induct active coaches. They changed the protocol on that some 5-6 years ago. I think Jay Wright was the last one to sneak in the door while active. But upon retirement, I fully expect both. Even if Mark Few never wins a national title with what he's done, he's the all-time active leader in win percentage. Obviously, he's well on his way there. So I think that's
you know I'm not afraid to bet my life on this podcast. I've done it multiple times. I'd bet my life once again. Mark Few and Scott Drew will both be in the Naismith Memorial Hall of Fame someday, even if they both retired today.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
My life's on the line once again. I'm not afraid. I'm a symbol of courage.
Yeah, I mean it's Mark Few who's done one of the best program builds in the history of the sport. It's insane. It's unprecedented. There will be nothing ever like it again that we'll ever see. And Scott Drew has the greatest reclamation project, in my opinion, ever. He brought a program back from essentially death and has won a national championship, and it's wild. But yeah, I think their relationship and their job security plays a role in that, because you also have, I mean, unfortunately, like we're at about 89, 90 games for opening night right now, and we might get a couple more in there, I guess, before we get there. But I don't think so. This might be the last one. We're sneaking up pretty close here to the start of fall and practices. So this may well be the last game that gets scheduled for the opening Monday this season, again, November 4th. And you've got like Houston plays Jackson State, Alabama plays UNC Asheville, Arizona plays Canisius, Kansas plays Howard, Duke plays Maine, although that's a Cooper Flag thing. That's kind of cool. But as we mentioned on the Duke shoot around, it'd been amazing if they actually went to Maine. But no, that'll obviously be in Cameron. But the point is, a lot of the schools that are in the preseason top 25, they're going to open up with bye game opponents, with mid-major teams that they expect to beat and to beat easily. And it's no individual blame it's specifically to Nate Oates or specifically to Bill Self or anything like that. But in the aggregate, it is a major bummer for college basketball that overwhelmingly that opening night is just overrun with non-appealing matchups. Like there's a couple decent mid-majors that I'll care about because I love the sport. And I'm intrigued about Towson St. Mary's. Like Towson could be a preseason top 10 mid-major team in the country. Pat Scarry was one of very few coaches in the entire country that didn't lose a single player to the portal. Going to play St. Mary's. That's an awesome mid-major level kind of game. Arkansas State versus Akron in the Sun Belt MAC Challenge, which many people may not even realize is a thing. Well, the Sun Belt MAC Challenge is a thing. Arkansas State and Akron could be awesome in majors. I enjoy that, but that's not bringing in casual people, particularly on the opening night of the season on a Monday. And so you need more enticing matchups. Texas, Ohio State, that's okay. It's in Vegas. I'll be intrigued by it. You needed something big, like Florida versus South Florida. That's decent. South Florida was awesome last season, unexpectedly so under Amir Abdur-Rahim, who did another great rebuild job, GP. But these are not marquee matchups. Gonzaga against Baylor, particularly in Spokane. No, it's not at the Kennel. It's going to be in downtown, and also part of that is because this is going to be, if you don't have a game on campus, you can basically have the school can get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to play the game, and then they can use those resources to put them toward NIL collectives. So also this works as an NIL game in effect. So that's why they're playing it there for a number of reasons. I also don't think Scott Drew was all too eager to go and open up his season at the Kennel. I get all that. This is a marquee matchup, and certainly gives at least a little bit of pop. Like the first week's got some interesting stuff to it, but on the first night of the season, you've got an actual matchup to build up to look forward to, and you've got them both in your top 10. I think there's a chance Gonzaga, once we get to the preseason AP top 25 poll, I think there's a chance Gonzaga's outside the top 10, but we're guaranteed a top 15 matchup. And then the sport is obviously better for that, even if it's juxtaposed against Monday Night Football, which isn't ideal, but because of the way the calendar breaks down, they're not going to start the game on start the season on election night. I don't even know, GP, if there's a single game happening on election night. This matchup was briefly debated about doing it, and rightfully and smartly so, they decided, not to go up against the biggest story on the entire planet.
Yeah.
So you get forced with two not great options. They pick the better of the two, and that'll be opening on that Monday.
Yeah, I'm glad we got this. I'm glad they're doing it. I mean, in the simplest of terms, one marquee matchup is better than zero.
Yeah.
Although, Texas, Ohio State could be good as well.
It could be, but it's not on this level.
No, although those are two also top 25 teams, at least in my mind, heading into the season. So fine, let's lump that one in there too. Two marquee matchups are better than one. One's better than zero. It's a simple math thing. The other problem is Monday. I just hate starting the season on a Monday. You realize it doesn't matter what happens. Graham Ike goes for 40. Gonzaga beats Baylor at the buzzer. You're the B block at best, because Patrick Mahomes just got done playing. All right. So on Monday night, it doesn't matter opening day of the college basketball season. It doesn't matter what happens in the sport. You're the B block because Patrick Mahomes is playing. You wake up the next day. Is anybody talking about anything that happened on Monday in college basketball? No, because you're still talking about Patrick Mahomes and the election. It's Kamala and Trump all day long, all night long. It's just silly. It's like the WNBA playoffs start Sunday. Why? I know there's a reason, but greatest WNBA season in history just happened. It'll conclude today. Playoffs start Sunday. Man, you give me Asia Wilson and Caitlin Clark on a Tuesday night, game one's WNBA playoffs. Can't wait. I'll watch your doubleheader. On Sunday, most people are going to be watching professional football. They might be aware that the WNBA thing's happening, but there are, I think, millions of people. I don't think this is a hyperbolic statement. Perhaps millions of people who would watch WNBA playoffs, but won't on Sunday because it's opposite the NFL. Similarly, there are, I don't want to put numbers on it, lots of people who would be really focused on college basketball to launch its season if it was there were more good games, and B, starting on a different day. This day is awful. Just absolutely awful. And I don't know why they can't work around this. They should work around this. Well, start the season on Wednesday.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't give you Wednesday should have been the date. Why it isn't, I can't give you that. They obviously didn't start it on Tuesday because it's an election year. There are actually, I'm looking, I think there are 12 games happening on election day this year, which sure, why not? But the Monday opening was allotted specifically because of election day. Obviously someone in the chat was saying the season started on Friday. It has started on Fridays in the past, but I would argue Friday's even worse.
Friday's terrible because
Friday's the worst day for it to start.
By the time all your games happen on Friday, by the time we wake up on Saturday, nobody cares anymore because college game day's on. Friday is awful. Monday is awful. Election night, no chance.
Non-election years, Tuesdays. The
On
day
non-election years, let's start on Tuesday.
Yeah.
In election years, let's start on Wednesday. This shouldn't be that simple.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that difficult, I should say.
I hear what you're saying. I agree. The diehards will find the game. I get that, but you're trying to reach more of a mass appeal audience, and going up against the NFL just is not, particularly, and also in every presidential election is huge, but this one, each one feels bigger every 4 years. And
I heard democracy's on the line. That's what I heard.
That's what they're saying out there, and so at least we get the game. I applaud Few and Drew for getting this done, and I'm excited for the game. Listen, it was enough for us to start a show here in mid-September. It's a big time game, and both coaches can afford to lose it, because a lot of coaches, they want to get the quote unquote easier opponent to start off with. You start 1-0, you roll into your season before. Some of these schools will obviously play a high profile opponent, your Dukes, everyone in the Champions Classic. It used to be the Champions Classic started the season on a Tuesday, and that was a great thing. And now that has been, the coaches have kind of won that power struggle with ESPN, which is unfortunate, because I think that we should be starting the sport the season each season with it. Like, I'm not asking for 12 absolute banger games.
Champions Classic was great. Just a doubleheader. The whole country's focused on it.
Give me a doubleheader.
And again, I'm not blaming. In past years, it would have been John Calipari, Mike Krzyzewski would have played a role in this. I'm not blaming anybody individually. I'm just saying that all you ever hear from college basketball coaches is about how much they care about the sport, and they love the sport, and they need to do what's best for the sport, and they need somebody looking out for the sport. And then when they are in a position to do something that's good for the sport, they often choose not to.
Yeah. And
good for the sport would be the Champions Classic opening the season on a non-Monday, non-Friday, non-Saturday, non-Sunday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, basically, is what I'm looking at. The Champions Classic should be, that's what's best for the sport. And they could do that if the coaches agreed to do it, but they don't. And it's not good for the big picture.
It's not. You need we need if we're not going to go back to that, which I really would like to go back to that, please. Then we need a couple more coaches like Few and Drew to step up and be willing to play on the first night of the season, like notable games. Last thing for me on this, I do know there are talks about having some sort of standardized length of the season starting for next season, in terms of, all right, what day the opening date is up for debate, what date it would actually play on, and slowly but surely getting this done so you can have at least a little bit better of a start. And then I don't think this is going to happen, but an intriguing one source told me on Wednesday there's an intriguing idea out there you're allowed 31 regular season games, but in an effort to make the opening day and opening night of the season more compelling, frankly, before I say this, I would love for this to happen. I know how these people work at the NCAA and conference and coaching level. It's not going to happen, which is unfortunate. But there's a carrot being dangled out there that basically is, you get a 30-second regular season game if you want it, but you only get it if you play on the opening night of the season, and some to be determined, I think, competitive thresholds was how it was laid out to me, are met. So if you want your 30-second game, you've got to play a certain level of opponent to cross that bar. You don't get a 30-second game to play a projected 170 team at Ken Palm or 240 team at Torvik. It's a wonderful idea to incentivize another game and high-quality matchup, but I find it unlikely that it would happen. But at least I like the fact that some people care about this and are trying to make the start of the season a little bit better. This opening season, the calendar isn't great. I'd expect something better in the wings once we get to 2025.
Yeah. I like that idea. I don't know if it's a perfect idea. I'm sure there'd be some problems, flaws with it, but you know what I appreciate more than anything? Somebody's thinking. Yeah. Somebody's trying. I hate the attitude you so often get from just people who either have the power or in connection with people who have the power to make change. And they're like, well, what are we going to do? Well, it's just the way it is. It doesn't have to be the way it is. We can change these things, and we should. Look out for what's best for the sport. Starting on a Monday opposite Patrick Mahomes is not best for the sport. Only having maybe at most 2 compelling big marquee matchups on opening night is not good for the sport. So the idea you just floated, I don't know if it's perfect. I like the sentiment. I like the thought behind it. And anytime people are thinking about ways to make things better, that's good enough for me, because often I don't think enough people are thinking that way. Let's move on. Big headline on Wednesday: Adrian Wojnarowski is retiring as an NBA insider at ESPN, becoming the general manager of St. Bonaventure's men's basketball program. It's a big get for the Atlantic 10. I think we have to admit. We're going to discuss it momentarily. First, though, a word from our partners.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
Adrian Wojnarowski has announced that he is retiring as an NBA insider with ESPN. He's going to become the general manager of St. Bonaventure's men's basketball program. Massive get for the Atlantic 10. Norlander, what did you make of Woj's career change?
What did I make of it? GP, this is one of the wildest sports media stories of all time. You have the most notable, in my opinion, because of how Woj has dominated that NBA beat for well over a decade. The most notable, influential, powerful, quote unquote traditional sports media person. I say that in terms of like he wasn't television. He was I say this bluntly. He was a hack, and then he obviously transitioned to the sports TV. He's operating at the height of his powers and his earning opportunities, and at 55, like he's clearly was not in. I mean, he was in the winter of his career, but no one, his profession, no one knew it. But he could have done this if he wanted to. He could have done this at an elite level for another decade at minimum there,
and then run for president.
Yeah, and then and opts to shut it down entirely. Like this is an absolute stunner. And to do this and say, you know what, I'm gonna follow a man's lead. There once was a man who was the master of ceremonies for Atlantic 10 Media Day for, I think it was 2 years. And clearly what you did during those two media days back in, like, what is it now, 2013, 2014, at this point, it's been a long time. But you obviously set the stage and blazed the trail for Woj to follow in your footsteps. And now he's going to be the general manager at St. Bonaventure. It's GP. It's I think it's incredible, but it is wild. I mean, can you imagine like Adam Schefter saying, I'm just, I'm going to retire and I'm just going to go, be the linebackers coach for Michigan. And to be clear, Woj isn't going to coach. He's going to be the general manager. So he's going to run NIL, which is, and I know you had the thoughts. Well, I'm sure you heard from people, because I heard from a few folks that were blindsided by this. One coach texted me and said, you couldn't pay me $1 billion to live in Olean, which is where St. Bonaventure is located. But we hear from these coaches. We've talked about it so many times on the show this year. The NIL environment and what it has done, not just to coaches, but most notably coaches, but people in athletic departments, athletic directors, people tasked with working in this area. It has worn these people out. They are at their wits' end. They're pulling their hair out. It's never been a more chaotic, uncertain, and frustrating time to be employed at the college athletics level. And Adrian Wojnarowski said, that's the life for me. I think it's amazing. And for people that are similarly stunned, the one thing that makes it less stunning for me is now a lot of people realize what you and I obviously, and basically anyone who knows Woj personally know, he is emphatically obsessed with his alma mater, to the point where I remember I think it was either the first or second time we ever did the show on CBS Sports Network, he group texted us, and it was like in the A block in the middle of the show. And he said, when are we getting to Bonnie's talk? Like, just loves his Bonnies. And this is an incredible, incredible story. I can't wait to see how it plays out here. The idea of someone of his talent, connections, and drive now being in charge of the NIL operation there is a fascinating dynamic in college athletics.
Yeah, I don't think it's that different than what we hear from college coaches these days. They're not all acting on it the way Jay Wright acted on it. But what I hear from college coaches often these days is, I'm pretty much at the point where I've got enough money and I'm not having fun anymore. This is not the way I want to live. This is not the way I want to spend my days. I talked to a college coach just last week. I was at my son's football game and he called and we were talking through all this stuff. And this guy's in his 60s, early 60s, I guess. And he was like sharing a conversation he had with a friend who had retired. And this friend had asked him, like, how many good years do you think you got left? You know, just walking around feeling good the way you walk around right now. I have these thoughts sometimes. Like, I'm 47 years old. I know I look 57, but I'm 47 years old. And I know I'm not what I want. I know I can't do everything I used to do. Like, I tried to turn a double play with my kids' baseball team back in the spring and slipped a disc in my back. I was sidelined for 2 weeks. Okay. So I know I'm not what I was. But I can pretty much do what I want to do. Like, I know I am old, but when I'm walking around, when I'm just like walking around, I don't feel old. And I don't feel like my age is preventing me from doing things on a daily basis that I would enjoy doing. But sometime it will. We will reach that point. Everybody does. And I just think that the life he was living is a hard life. It's an exhausting life. I mean, when you have to take every phone call, when your time's no longer yours, like I can go play golf on Sunday morning, and no matter who calls, I probably don't have to take it if I don't want to, with few exceptions. He needs to take it every time it rings, because the reason he was making, and this is all public, out there, so I'm not pocket watching or telling secrets, but the reason he was making like $7 million a year is because he was the absolute best, probably ever, at getting news headlines connected to the sport he covers and putting them out there first. And so when your livelihood is tied strictly to that, or at least mostly to that, that becomes an exhausting way to live. And I'll let Woj tell his own story, but it seems pretty clear to me. He reached a point where he said, I have made enough money where my family can live comfortably and I don't have to live like this anymore. Barely sleeping. I mean, he would go so far as to, if you ever talked to him and he was about to get on a plane, it was always 5 a.m. or 11 o'clock at night. He always tried to fly as late as he could or as early as he could, because that was the time where you were least likely to miss something, a text, a call, something you might need. So he's trying to land wherever he's going by 8 a.m. So he's on the ground before the day even gets going, for the most part. These are the ways you have to live when that specifically is your job. And then combine it with your former mentor is younger, more single, doesn't have kids. They can really attack the job every minute of every hour of every day if they want to. So now you got to keep up with that, even though you got a wife, you got 2 children, you have other interests. And then every time you happen to get beat on one, the whole internet's waiting to dunk on you. And then you got to deal with that feedback if you are seeing it. It just, I'm not surprised that lifestyle wears on you. And you could, I'll just take it straight from his statement. He said, I know what this job requires and I'm no longer driven to do it. That makes sense to me at the age of 55. And it's just like I texted him yesterday. I don't know. I don't use this word. I use this word intentionally. I admire the decision. It's not what I would do, because either I'm not strong enough to do it, or I certainly wouldn't be interested in running a college basketball program. That's the last thing I would do. It's not what I would do, but I admire that he's willing to do it, because not many people would be capable of not just walking away from millions of dollars, but also walking away from stardom. He's a television star.
Yeah.
He's a television star on a well-watched, think of it as television show, and he's given that up. This is not unlike some actor or actress being the star of some successful television show. People see them on TV every day or every week, and they just say, you know what, I've had enough. I don't want to do it anymore. I want to go do something less glamorous, less visible. That not many people, because ego sometimes, are capable of walking away from those two things specifically, the money and the fame. And he's not only capable of doing it, well, he's actually doing it. And I know it might seem weird to some, certainly when the news broke yesterday morning. I bet you he will not look back on this with regret. I bet he's going to enjoy his life. He might get to a point where he realizes running a college basketball program ain't as fun as he thought it would be. He'll get there and then decide to do something else. I do not think he'll regret giving up the lifestyle you have to be the biggest newsbreaker on television in the NBA. His life will improve.
I think it's a good message to send to a lot of people in the media, aspiring, current or otherwise, that when you hit burnout, and if you are in a position to do something with your life, you should change it. I mean, because you and I have broken news, and what we've done is not nearly at the level as him. But yeah, it can be very taxing. And fortunately, we are not asked or tasked with doing it at the level that he's been done. Because frankly, you and I have no interest in doing that. I just wouldn't do it. It's
I don't have the time. Like I've had
this time. Yeah. Like, young kids. Like
I can't be the podcast guy and the top 25 and one guy and the flying to New York every week guy and in studio till 1 o'clock in the morning guy and then also be that. It's just there's only so many hours.
Like and there are when it comes to carousel season and stuff like that, like we do some of it, but this round the clock stuff, not even a chance. No shot. It has a real impact on quality of life, and the one thing that you can't get, obviously, you can't take more of his time. And so I thought it was a healthy thing for him to express why he made the decision, and I'm sure we'll get more in the coming days, weeks, or months on all of this stuff. But man, oh man, it is wild to think that he is going to be working in the A-10 and like where he went to college. Like it's Bonaventure. It's that place really is different. I say that in terms of not just its small, but fanatical fan base. There is something about that place. I had one coach hit me up yesterday. I was like, there must be something in the water, man. I can't, to paraphrase the coach that reached out, it was basically, I can't believe this guy is leaving $7 million a year and ESPN and all his NBA connections and going and living effectively, I guess, part-time in Ole in New York, which just speaks to his connection to the school. There's no doubt about it. And that's the other thing. I saw one or two people mention this, but it is worth noting. Woj could have easily, and this kind of speaks to his passion and dedication to the program. If he wanted to transition and retire from ESPN and just wanted to say, I'm just going to go work with, I'll be a consultant with a sports agency or consultant with any NBA,
anything.
I like it. Snap of the finger. It's done. Right. He didn't do that. He is really doing this. I don't know what he's going to get paid. I don't care what he's going to get paid, but at St. Bonaventure, I can't imagine now he's going to go from $7 million a year to, modest six figures. And I mean, modest and true, as he said, in service of the university. And now try and haven't talked to Woj yet. I'm just telling you, he's doing this because he wants to dominate and run the A-10. Like he wants to, it is, and understandably so. Now, the ironic part about it is this: when he wasn't employed by the university, he was able to donate to the NIL collective there. Now he can't do that anymore. So whatever he's donated is what he's donated. And now it's more like it's obviously going to be hands-on and fundraising and alumni relations and using his connections, obviously, and he'll be able to impact it in different kind of ways. But in a certain way, previously, he was able to really donate to that school in ways that were impactful from an NIL standpoint. And I also think one last thing on this from me, I don't know this as a fact, but given what Bonaventure is, and Mark Schmidt's been there now since 2007, he's made the tournament 3 times. He's been a candidate at previous stops before. I haven't talked to Mark about this, but I almost wonder if this is like a real rever, a real motivator to extend his tenure there and to help ensure Bonaventure's survival in the next phase of college athletics. I think that this is me completely speculating, but you hear from a variety of people at the mid to low major level and all of the high level anxiety and uncertainty about how they will exist in the revenue sharing model when they won't be able to obviously share that much revenue with their athletes because these schools don't make a lot of money. Is doing something like this going to help sustain Bonaventure's existence within the A10 at the D1 level moving forward. I have to believe that's part of the calculus there, but I'd love to know. I really would love to know what event or events happened over the past 2, 4, 6, 8 months with Woj that led him to this point. Because you and I both know, like, he was he was heavily invested in tracking like the portal with Bonaventure and who they were getting and all. We know that was happening. So did it reach? I'm genuinely curious. Did it reach a point where one day he found himself just paying more attention and more emotionally invested in what was happening in the portal than if this would have been say April, then say the NBA playoffs, and it just kind of dawned on him like, you know what, here's my answer right here. I'd love to hear from him at some point on that, because I do think this is, again, super fascinating. I can't wait to see what happens next.
Well, like he really does love this. I think it's probably on some level a dream of his to be connected to the men's basketball program at his alma mater. I know you mentioned you talked to somebody and they were like, you couldn't pay me $1 million to live.
No, they said $1 billion. They said you couldn't pay me $1 billion to live in Ole.
And I understand that's the common opinion about that place, but he loves it.
Yeah.
His wife loves it. That's their school. They care deeply about it. I mean, you know, it is not, it would not be out of nowhere for him to text me on a random Thursday and be like, what do you know about this 6'8" 3-star center from upstate New York? I'm like, I don't know anything about a 6'8" 3. I don't know anything about it. I ain't looked at a 3-star in years. All right. I don't know. But like, he was in it. Like, he cared deeply. And
yeah. On that front, just a quick anecdote story. So I won't give too much context here, protect the parties involved, I guess. But I was working on something, and there was someone in NBA circles that I was dealing with, and I couldn't quite get a read on how they were acting, why they were acting, whatever. So I called Woj and I was like, hey, listen, you know, this, that, or the other. I texted him first and then he called me or whatever. But as he was texting me, he was like, yeah, I'll get back to you. Hold on. I'm just looking up. I'm looking up on this 6'3". I won't even name the school. I don't think the player went to the, or I don't think he went to Bonaventure, but he was like, yeah, hold on one second. And he wasn't joking. He was like, hold on. I'm trying to get a look on this 6'3" guard in the portal that might be thinking about going to the Bonnies or whatever. This was me hitting him out of nowhere, like randomly. And at that point, this is what he said. And then it's just something else. And also super kind and helpful, obviously, to many people in media, regardless of where you worked. I mean, I remember one point I went to an NBA draft. This was like a decade ago, and it wasn't my first one. It was like my second or third, I think. But I was like, you know, I'm gonna get there early for whatever reason. So I get to the Barclays Center at like, I want to say like 3 o'clock maybe, and the draft starts at 7:30, 8 o'clock. I get there early. I might have been earlier than that. I might have been like 2 o'clock. And I get there, and there's only one other person who beat me. One other person. I'll look at you, Nada. He's got the tweet. Woj was the only one that beat me to that, you know, insane work ethic. In fact, I did want to give you shine. Nada, bring up the other one that I found. You broke, I didn't remember this happening, but you broke a coach getting fired. It was Isaiah Thomas back in 2012 or something like that.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, and Woj gave you credit. He said, as Gary Parrish report, this is April 6, 2012. This is also an insight, by the way, into, if you only got to kind of know Woj through ESPN, you really missed him at his most devastating and acerbic with the written word. Incredible writer. As Gary Parrish reports, Isaiah Thomas fired at FIU. No surprise, he spent most of his time trying to get jobs instead of doing that one. He was devastating. Kind of brutal, but yeah, obviously.
He was a real killer back then. As a columnist,
like go after David Stern and LeBron James.
He could slice you up, and then I think, again, I don't want to speak for Woj, but then I think that becomes counterproductive when you're getting paid millions of dollars to break news, because you don't want to rip, let's just say, the Grizzlies front office on a Tuesday, and then on a Wednesday you're trying to break a Ja Morant extension. And the same people you just ripped yesterday are the ones you need to text you back. Like that, the column writing became the column writing made the news breaking more challenging. So you just stop sharing the opinions. so that it's easier to get the information. I think that's probably the thought behind that.
Yeah. Well, bold new era. Who's next? That's my question. Who's next?
Well, if you're the A10, I think it's time to dream as big as you've ever dreamed. I mean, I imagine in that office they were like, all right, we got Gary Parrish as master of ceremonies, A10 media days pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
We did that twice. If we could do that, why couldn't we get Woj? And so now the next step is like, all right,
I got it. I got the answer, by the way.
I know. And there's somebody whose contract's up, within the next year. It's been pretty high profile. Prediction.
Yeah.
Stephen A. Smith is headed to Fordham.
Okay.
Stephen A. Smith is headed to Fordham. I know where this is going.
That's a great call. I got another one for you.
Mm.
I actually texted Matt McKillop at Davidson, and I said, Woj set the stage. Steph Curry running your program in 3 years. And his exact response was, a lot of things crossed my mind when I read the Woj news. Steph as our GM did not. So, be amazing, though. What if the A10 became truly the power brokers of the entire sport? You had all these. That'd be incredible. I'm openly rooting for it. Let's go. Give me one after another. Come on now. Power players left and right. Who's LaSalle got lined up? Huh?
Who's gonna run LaSalle's program?
Yeah, Jameer Nelson back at St. Joe's.
No question about that.
Who's the most notable George Washington alumnus that can get in there? This is what I gotta know. Let's make it happen, people. Let's go.
I know who's running Dayton someday.
Give it to me.
Deron Holmes.
Deron Holmes. Okay.
I think Deron Holmes should run Dayton.
Well, Dan Patrick is a graduate of Dayton, so maybe Dan Patrick can.
Okay, well, let Dan Patrick do it.
There you go.
That's fine with me. That's fine with me. It really does feel like, I know, because people are like, dude, this is crazy. You're going to run a college basketball program. Like, that's not relaxing. But it will be invigorating for him. Like, it would almost, to me, it feels like he is being given an opportunity to, like, similar in his mind to, like, if somebody called me for some stupid reason and been like, no, you want to run the Mets?
Is that okay? Hold on, let's do this. So what? Yeah, that's the. First of all, it's absurd, but whatever.
Of course.
So, like, what's the thing that you would be willing to do? And how about this? Willing, but also probably capable of doing.
Yeah.
What's the thing? Is there a thing out there?
I don't think I'm capable.
You're not running the Mets.
I don't think I'm capable of doing anything. I think this is all I can do.
It's just the Mets.
Yeah, but like I'm not capable of running the Mets. I'm not one of those fans who'd be like, I could run the Mets. Like, I couldn't run the Mets, okay? Obviously I would never be considered to run. It's an absurd thing.
You put it out there.
But
Jerry Seinfeld has said this, by the way. He's like, he's like, seriously put that out. He's like, I'd love to run the Mets.
But it's like
Larry David with the Jets has done this as well. Continue.
Yeah, but it's like that would be a dream. Could you imagine? Like, I'm walking into Citi Field as the general manager of the Mets. It would be amazing. Probably stressful.
Yeah.
Mike Vaccaro would eat me up, but it would be and that feels like what this is for him. Like, he's getting to run the men's college basketball program that he cares deeply about. He might look up in a few years and realize this ain't as fun as I thought, but like, he's going to at least get to experience it. And I imagine he couldn't be more fired up about it. And, oh, by the way, just like, don't rule this out. He still is only 55 years old. He could be back breaking NBA news someday. Yeah. Just because you are burnt out and don't think you want to do this anymore doesn't mean you stay there forever. Yeah. How many people unretire? Even basketball coaches. I mean, I can remember talking to Chris Mack. He was burnt out and didn't think he would ever coach again. Well, now he's coaching again. Yeah. So, like, I'm not ruling out that at 58 he could be back breaking news at ESPN or Yahoo or anywhere else. But he clearly reached a point where, again, his own words, he doesn't have the drive to do what it takes to do the job anymore, and he wants to do something else. I think that's an important message. Time is not on an endless supply. You only get so much of this, and once you have the money, like most people do the jobs that they do. Like, you and I do the jobs we do because we love our jobs. I mean, I want to speak for you, but I think that's true. I love working.
Absolutely.
Like if I grab $20 billion tomorrow, I might do less, but I wouldn't stop working. I enjoy working. But most people work because they have to earn the money to sustain a lifestyle. That's why they get up every day and set the alarm. Well, once you've reached a point where you don't have to work for the money because you've got the money, then it should be about doing what you want to do, what's enjoyable, what sounds like a great way to spend your days. And that's what he's doing. And I genuinely genuinely admire it. I admire it. I think it's wonderful.
I think that's a show.
I think that's a show. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry Teagle. He's a legend. Huck Larnell. Thank you guys once again for listening to, watching Eye on College Basketball Podcast. If you are not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, more of us than there are of them. That should be reflected in the comments. So do that, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Till then, take care.